Infrastructure, recalculation, remodify high setting line business locations, reconstructing line settings, screen lines operation to a signal. Setting track lines and high interference is really understanding how to mobilize your set lines and activation string locations and settings. It's all direct SIN locations in the high end positions. Now the track lines and high interference and high calculation position all levels is opened up sequence patterns. Now that reconciles its calculation to its seal. Seven seals, seven activation lines of bodies of water, three track lines, first state track line, condition line interference. Seven calculation high interference and position locations, four over pi, three central lines of centers. So there's four lines of zero lines and set lines of three zero line communication setting. Okay, we got communications in the sectors, vectors, and quads set location system. Dimensional rounds of sequence patterns, high calculation to its streamlines, bandwidth over pi. Now this is a broad banner width line center line interferences, all copies line setting high interference. Now there's a tapestry line streamline. That's a calculation amount of high interference of dimensional line rotations. Each illumination graph line is going to be in a quarter panel of a graph stream. Let me say that again. Quarter graph of high set line conditions. Indirect signal is tracing its position locations into line conditions. Now the line communication interference is a 7 digital line of a code signal. That 7 line interference line track line in its communication system is extremely complicated because I'm all levels of digital line framing. The line communication is sky grids and sky nets and skylines and high interference location and line position of satellites and rotation surface is aligning its signals and set locations. It's a rotation spin cycle. Now the connections of its cluster is changing position location settings. You guys are tracking line streams. So it's a 7-day window and a 7 million line of an error, 7 million years in the future and track line communication system. This opens up all calculations to its containment setting. Now, in-track line communication is taking the old into the new set locations. This puts it into high calculations. Now, the track lines and high interference is going to change program setting. This is going to run a systematic line calculation system into initiation. Now, this comes into EXE. Line interference of XT line 1. Line interference line condition high system. Calculation line interference and set line condition high system. Area line centers of C in set location setting. Directing signal location of its energy cycle line calculation setting interference, tracking communication in its position locations in your 7 digital code set location system, putting your track lines and high interference, taking position locations into old system, into a new system line setting, triangulation of interface line communication system. Now, the line calculation is really understanding how to use the bandwidths over pi. Now, this is a metric stream location and division line setting. This center lines its communications to a set location system. This interlines its calculations to its ionized high line interference to the spheric line rotation position locations into high calculations skylines, sky grid, sky position, sky panels. Now the pillars and the position locations of the high set location system is going to track lines and dimensional line settings. This opens all state location system. The high line interference is positioned to its all calculations coming into geometric operation of patterns. The recognition of time sequence puts position locations over sector. Now the line calculation line interference is changing all sequence location of its settings. Okay, tracking communication to its system. All right, so 7 calculation line interference. Okay. So get in line in rotation and set positions. All right. So we got one line and center communication line stream locations into bracket locations 1, 2, 3, 4. 4-line setting. Okay. Equals lines position locations. Travels its line center rotation. Okay, into 3 set line conditions. All right. 3 set lines of high setting. So we take the 4 line and we take the 3 line. Okay, it comes line communications. 3 line sets lines of high interference and 4 sets line calculations in position and calculation line setting. So that's 34 line stream, 34 line activation. Now that rotates this line interference. We take the 4 line channel in position locations and we take the 3 line channel into 4 line setting. 4 equals lines of 3, 3 equals lines of 7, so the line condition system. That's 4 over line settings into 3 set location system into pyramid activation line stream location setting. Okay, done by equation. All right, so centerline the communication of decentralized. Try to understand the centralized communication to its system. So this is where we come into spherical sphere, right here. All calculation line, rotation, interference, line calculation setting, right? Directing signals and line conditions of 2 path line streams. Correction of timelines and center communication positions, walking surface. Now that rotates its spin cycle into 144, track communication, track communication, track communications, and set location settings. Now direct line interference comes into 3 lines. We set position locations into 4. 4 lines at high interference, equal lines of 3, line condition of 7, the set location system, done by equation. All right, so center communication line interference. Now we have to decentralize the high interference. Center calculation of the lines of 0 line in position of 2 panels into pillars and communications. Now this redirect line conditions to a setting in set locations. This opens all line interference and set location to higher levels of travel communication. Now that lines its communications in high interference in position location high system. Now the track line high calculation system sets the lines of 0 operation to set location setting. This redirects line calculation setting in direct location signals. Now we set panels line interference of 12 line measure, correlation system, indirect line system. That changes communication to path line. You're walking the surface line conditions and set locations. All right. Walking the surface and line conditions, high center line position. Walking the line interference line condition on the line position. That's 3 lines. So 3 line communication. Center calculation line interference, center communication line position locations into 2 line tracks, center line position of 4 is center communication. All right, so line communication avatar is walking circus locations high setting of 1 of 4 set location. So this measures as line interference and line position of 1, 2, 3, 4 panels of electrical lines, electrical roads, line interference and magnetic higher information channels in line condition high system and track communication setting and rotation surface. Center calculation lines of 0 operation center line condition high system and track communication. Tracking lines of center line, flux path communication to setting and direct communication signals. Done by equation. All right. All right. So centralize the communication line settings. Okay. So again, we go for 4 lines of 3, 3 lines of 7, so communication system. So we take the lines of 7, 7, 7, 7, bracket communication setting and direct signals. Now the 7 line center lines is line communication system across the signals line position location. So that's 1 line in position of 3 line locations. All right. Center calculations into 4. We take the 4 lines into 3, 4 lines in position, center lines and ground lines into 3 line connections. All right. 4 equals 3 in line conditional levels. And position line setting into 0 line operation set location setting. Done by equation. All right. So center line position locations, so both levels. Now we've got the 1 lines of 0 line at 4, equal line conditions in position of 4, equal line position of 3. Calculates line interference is 7, equal line conditions of 12. Center line is in high positions 12, in position of 12, this is rotation of 12 set locations. 12 line center and 12 lines in position of positive, negative, in position of negative and positive, negative, in position of negative and positive location settings. Directing signal location system. Now directing line setting is a Merkaba channel. This operates a set line into the communication set location settings. So we take the 12 line yards and we take the 12 position location directions, setting lines of center lines into left course line channel. Direction of the timeline sequence. We take the 7 line and travel its position location it travels. 7 calculation line interference. We take the 7 lines of north, west, south, and east in set location settings. Bracket calculation line interference. 7 in channel, positive. 7 in line conditions, negative. 7 in positions, positive, and position location, negative line setting. Balance calculation line interference. Travel communication and position locations into 7777. Bracket line center line interference of 144 equals lines of 7 locations. Down by equation. All right. Setting signals into modulation, all levels of navigation surface. Direction of time sequence puts line communication settings 1111, bracket communication setting equal line condition of 7777, bracket communication line center lines of 4, positions of 3. Now the 4 line center line interference sets 4 line center locations of 104 and set locations of 3, sets communication of the sun and surface location system. Now the line calculation line comes into the moon line center line interference. So we take the 1 line into 4 lines equal lines of 2, set lines of 6 in positions. So moon comes in, line rotation surface, and set calculations, sets line interference and travel communication into the opposite direct location setting. Down by equation. Okay, high center line interference, a cosmic universal line setting that rotates its surface location system. So we take the 1 lines of SEAL, line calculation system, waiting on signal, setting calculations of 4 lines of 3, 7 calculation lines of 7 grounds, levels, ozone, line rotation positions, 5 atmosphere line settings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we get 1 lines of alpha, calculation of delta, theta line interference into omega set location setting and direct signal, done by equation. All right, so the sail setup and line calculation streamline. Now this sets line position location into the perimeters. Setting calculation line or rotation surface location of Mercury. Mercury sets line calculation line interference. Setting correlation settings and direct signal locations in position to its flux capacitor channel operation. Setting correlation settings, and high center interference. Setting direct line center line interference into Y lines in position location of flux capacitor and set location system. Then we change the line interference of zero line operation, zero line operation, zero line operation in 3 set locations. Channel line streamlines into triangulation line interference in set locations high setting and travel line position locations and higher calculation line positions in 3 constellation path of set location settings. That my equation. All right, so setting signals in set location system. That's 4 over line, 4 equals location. So we got 4 lines equals lines of pi. All right. So we take the pi line is a high line interference, pi equal locations in position. Center line calculation is 104. Now the 1 line setting position locations opens up all levels in the sun line rotation surface and set location setting. Now this direct line center line interference. So we take lines, negative line in position all levels, positive set locations of 3. 3 sets of lines of the center communication setting opens up signals. 2 panel line and rotation interference and set location system. Now we set the line communication to its dimensional sail. Rotate its line center line 1 of 4 line rotation set lines and communication, setting direct line center line interference and position location high system. Mercury sets lines at communication, opens up cycles and high line interference to 1 CO location setting. This redirects line calculation of 0 line in position of ozone. So the 1 lines equal lines of 0, equal lines of 0, equal lines of ozone, line rotation position at track line communication setting, done by equation. All right. So the 1-4 is set up in position location waiting on position. So calculation line interference, 104 lines, equal line kinetic system, bracket communication settings, 2 angles, line rotation interference, 0 operation into 4 in set location system, track lines into 3 and set lines in high setting, 0 line operation, set line connection to system to your pyramid activation line setting. This rotates its ground lines to operation surface and set location system. Now the line interference, we set the 5 line and center communication. So it's line condition set. So we take the 54 line rotation interference, track line communications, 4 lines of generation streamlines in solar direction. Setting change lines and high interference at high set location setting. 1 line signal, line interference. That's 1 equal lines at positive or negative in set locations into XT1000 line stream in set location system. This channels its line center line conditions high system. Merkabah channels, line rotation surface in set locations, done through channels and operation to signals, done by equation. Okay, high center line interference. Now, tracking communication to its position location is all about understanding how to work through surface line setting. The operation surface location setting sets lines of 0 line settings. So line communication lines of the V line rotations into a diamond core set locations. This channel lines at circle line interference at center line positions. Opens all magnetic high wave information line setting. Open all communication to Mercury and waiting signal locations in set location setting. Directing signal lines and 0 operation set lines and high interference of travel communication system and direct signals, done by equation. Okay, directing signals and panels of operation streamlines of surface. 0 operation line interference. Now it's got a 1 lines of 0 line of 4 line equal lines of 54 line setting, 4 lines of 3, equal line connection system. So that's puts position of 43 line channel. Setting calculation line interference, bracket line position of 1, 2, 3, 4. Setting calculation line and equal locations into line centers of pi and calculation stream, done by equation. All right. So the 54 channel lines of phenomenon is setting pi position location at track lines. This is opening up all signal locations to your fragmentation lines and location of square lines. Rest time sequence, panel line interference in 1, 2, 3, and 4 waving cycles. Setting calculation of ground lines and set location 1, 2, 3, 4 in set location system. Travels lines, operation surface to the sun line in circle location setting and track communication. That tracks its line center line interference. So we take the 4 line equal lines of 2 in set location system. Center line position locations comes into 6 lines. 6 lines open up higher lines of higher calculation to its moon of operation surface. Center lines is communications across the stream. Center calculation line interference into its dimensional sail. Set lines of another dimensional sail line condition setting. Waiting on signals, graph lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 line signature pattern communication line, center line and direct location system. 7 ground lines of high interference, ozone line interference, atmosphere, hemisphere, stratosphere, hydrospheres, and position of biosphere, location of radiosphere, ultrasphere and spectrum spheres, high calculation system, millennium unquote, line calculation line in position, track line calculation line in position, put platitude line interference on set location system, and 1C line center of 7 million track locations in center position. Operation surface and set locations. Done by equation. All right, so complicado, isn't it? All right, so let's see here. How's everybody doing? Tracking lines of communication to its settings. All right. Getting on waiting signal location and position. Okay, let's see here. Gypsy, yes, pre-flight checks, good. Heather, calculation line settings, good, fantastic. Geneva, all levels of high satellite interference. Chris, position location. Gingy, level setting, high position of Johnny line interference, line calculation system, track lines. Danielle, all levels of Bojan, direction of time sequence locations of pi. The center communication line interference is changing position location, high center interference, indirect location system, and all line setting. Okay, waiting on signal. All right, so that set up position locations. Amazing what we're coming into track lines. Again, we go through the 0 line rotation center interference, tracking communication line settings, in position location of 2 line centers. 2 line centers in position to a block line rotation. Now that block line rotation centers its position location to its Lu line setting, line interference, in position. This loops its line center lines of 6, in position locations of 8, in positions of 4, in positions of 3, in set location setting. Now this directs line signals. Right, this is where it gets interesting. Time locks, time frequency times pi, calculation of line setting. Now this redirect line interference is center communication of 4 lines at line position, rotation, line and rotation, and positions into magnetic force line channels in line conditions of perceptions over pi calculations. All right. 4 generation line center line interference sets 1 line center line conditions of 1, 0, 4 in set location setting. Directing signals travels line center line to the cubical line setting that sets position location into 6 into a half pipe calculation line in its rotation surface, a set location setting, directing signals, and 2 panel operation line travels and set location setting in direct signal. Done by equation. All right. So setting up round streams and set line condition interference is 7 million line track location system. So 1 line equal lines at interface. Now this gets interesting. Like it already isn't. Okay, so interface, we come into line track. Okay, we interline its calculation to its Merkaba up and its Merkaba down, in position east and position of west. Okay, I got some line settings, echo chamber line interference into position locations, channels, lines, and high interference of 2 panels. The operation line interference comes into the sun comes into triangulation position operation surface. Now, it's interesting because the moon shifts its line stream and center line communication into back force location. There's the moon, right? Setting calculation line interference, setting direct signals and set locations to echo chambers. Now, the recognition line interference comes into spider ops, setting calculation line in position, setting code weaving line, center line interference line condition system into its pi at direction of time sequence. Now, directing signals line interference splits anomalies and position locations to all levels. Moon travels line center, crosses line stream line interference in set location setting, direct signal. Done by equation. All right. So that's all calculated and modified through 1 line condition line setting, put in all line center locations in position. 7 interline calculation setting, indirect signals in set locations. All right. Okay, changing atmosphere line streams. Recognition of timelines is really understand how to formulate location to your settings. Now it gets extremely complicated once you come into your Schumann graph line. It set lines of its resonance, set location, setting, direction. Now directing line center lines of 6, in position locations of 4, line condition high center of 5 line setting rotation. Now that direct line center lines its position locations, how settings. This tracks lines to its communications, and monotone line interference and track location setting. This direct line centers line interference sets position locations to its dimensional cell set location. Done by equation. Graph interference and track line communication setting opens up all levels of ionized line setting, travel communication to cosmic universal line stream, center communication operation to the left, center communication operations of right, center communication operation of center, and communication setting, direct signal. Now, direct line interference, sun comes into line communication setting, tracks lines and information line interference into echo chamber line conditions of alpha waves. Redirecting line center line interference, center lines is communication setting and direct signal, and ground lines operation surface. Now, directing line center line and position locations comes into 7, comes into 7, comes into 7, comes into 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And set line calculation setting. Directing line interference is 7 equals lines of 5, line position of 12. 12 line center line interference sets sun communication lines of magnetic highway information center of set locations. Setting direct signals, 3 line strips, 3 line panels operation. Signal line in the grounds, 3 line in operation surface set location system. Directing signals and upline. Setting signals in high line communication setting. Directing signals in the ground, operation surface, power generation line interference, 104 track location, 7 over pi, set line calculation system, 4 in measure, 3 in calculation, center in operation. Setting signals, 7 main tracks, setting calculations, and 1 CO operation system. Done by equation. All right. So it's setting up a new anomaly. Now, set up natal line interference, the set location system is a natal chart. All right. Natal line to line rotation interference, natal line conditions at all levels of nature, direction line calculations of correlation, and position of communication setting. All right. Communication of correlation sets lines of 2 panels, operation locations across the streamlines, and set location setting, interdimensional set locations. Channel lines at stream locations. So the moon surface is line setting in the opposite location setting. This redirects line calculation setting into 7 million years into 7 ground rotation surface. Done by equation. All right. Getting signals and high interference is setting up pillars and panels and calculation line settings. Putting position locations at all levels, yes. Cell modification, line calculation timelines at high set locations of switch lines. Very good. So we switch the lines of the center line of the sun is set location of the moon, operation surface, and set location setting. This redirects line centers in position locations into 1, 2, 3, 4 in line calculation setting in position of a quarter graph in lines, graph of lines of 6 in center of 8, 8, 8, 8, 2 track line, split line, center line interference, 0 gravity, high line, and position of track line communication. Done by equation. All right. So operation sequence of navigation line streams. Setting direct line state location is calculation modify how you come into your longitude and line condition of your latitude line stream. 0 operation is center line interference is position location to its open window of 1 CO calculation line of travel. Calculation line interference is a kaleidoscope location system to your projection location settings. Now, directing signal is very powerful when you come into this line communication of travel settings and set locations. All right. Now, the line comes into its quarter pi, an erection of time sequence. Center lines is position location of its dimensional sail line setting. This redirect line centers. You see the S line? Sets lines in position location to its unification of its yin and yang. Process calculations, center lines. There's the 2 panels, operation stream. Now, this redirects line signals. Setting direct signal line interference is setting position location of 0 line rotation surface and set location system. Travels line and high interference, we take line communication. It's really interesting. Center lines, travel lines, travel lines, travel lines, and graph lines, high interference, location of graph lines, a holograph and line communications, and settings. Okay? Now, directing line center sets graph line streams 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's where you are for the track location setting. This redirects line centers, sets lines of 0 operation line sending interference and track location system. Travel lines and magnetic highway information line is set up position location in 7 ground line settings. Operation signal, line position location of 2 panels, operation to its pyramid, and set location setting and direct signal. Setting location, system location, operation. Done by equation. Okay, now there's a lot of communication surface. A lot of line settings and high interference. Now, they got line, high interference, line condition of 1 line, in position of 2 line, in position of 3 line wave set location settings. Direct lines and line interference of the sun line rotation surface. So I'm telling you exactly what's going on with the location of travels. This is what's going to happen in the 7-day signal location in your settings. So in that line communication, the moon lines its surface line and comes out of the equation into another realm division locations. Right? Channels out, comes back in. Sending calculations into line interference. Okay, UFO lines is screen. sets lines of graph lines and center communications in position location of road graphs. Setting calculation line and position locations in its dimensional dome line setting and rotation surface. Crosses streams and set line communication system to the earth line rotation to 7 calculation settings. Done by equation. All right. So getting you guys understanding what's happening, we're going to keep that line setting because we're going to come back to that set locations. All right. So when you get into the line calculation setting, it's all redirecting signs. Now, a sign line calculation setting has a direct signal. Setting that direct signal sets communication to its positions. All right. So we got a weighting signal lines, a bracket line interference, setting communications, 7 lines and high interference, ground levels, line and position ozone. Setting calculates line interference, weighting on signal location of 4 and position of 3 on channel operation. All right. So in that calculation line interference, we take the line position of 5 and position of 4. 4 lines at center lines of 5 line rotation surface and travels its communication setting in direct signal that operate set locations. Now the channel lines of 5 line in set location sets lines of the moon operation surface into the sun of operational line condition setting in direct signal. Setting direct signals as center line communication, flux capacitors, channels lines as line centers into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 lines at equal lines of 5 and 12 line rotation surface in set locations. Done by equation. All right, so mechanism of high interference of travel. Getting travel lines and high line and interference line locations changes all calculation modification of center lines. Operation surface, operation triangulation, operation ground lines and high setting. Okay? 3 lines of center communications, right? Center communication lines of 6 and positions all levels of 7 set line conditions. Travel calculations in the position of the sun crosses line stream into the center lines at set location of the moon. This sets another line position location of travel. Setting lat line communications comes into 2 pillars of operation stream locations. So I'm giving you exactly what's going on through the 7 journey that you guys are going to travel through line. Travel line to line interference is a graph line stream. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 line graph line settings, direct signal location system. Now the 0 line center line location is going to be offline rotations, and center communications. This sets lines at communication setting and direct signals in set location system and direct signal in set location. Done by equation, right? So this is channel lines of 4 lines at 3 lines, 7 over measured in set location of clock lines. Now directing signals is set lines. We're going to save that set location setting, coming back in communication to this line setting. Now directing line centers are energetic graph lines. Center communication of 4, 3 lines of high center interference, position of the sun and the moon. Travels communication, 3 lines of center line and communications, sets lines and high interference into east wind line setting. Redirecting lines of 4 travels to the opposite direct locations over pi and set lines of high line interference of 5 line strip line, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and set line calculations. Done by equation. All right, setting position of track lines, we come into this lines of 2 panels, line conditions. Now the clock line changes its communication rotation surface. Now that's 24 ground line center line interference, 24 trillion set lines and high interference, 25 line centers over pi. This is a quartered graph screen line and line rotation position of a screen line setting that centralizes communication setting that opens all signal line interference of 2 track lines in 1 position. Now that direct signal sets line communications over line. Center lines of 0 operation surface to its dimensional line sail and set location system direct signal. Done by equation. All right. Channel lines of 5 lines and high line interference travel communication setting. So the 4 lines, the lines of 3 sets position of 5 lines and high interference. This neutralizes communications in position locations into percentage lines of 98 line setting, 2 track line high interference, 100% location system, in track lines, 7 lines of high lines, in position of 7 million line streams, this allocation of sun, operation line setting, in position of the moon, setting calculation streamlines into 0 operation 100% and travel 144 line rotation surface into line calculation system and 555 channel operation lines at ground operation surface. Done by equation. All right. Setting 6 lines of seals and set lines and high center line interference track communication setting, rotation surface and set line high interference, 0 gravity line interference and position locations. 6 over lines equal lines of 7. 7 lines high interference, setting line position Mercury up, position down, center communications, setting line direct line connections to Mercury, lines its rotation surface set lines, opens cycles and high line in rotation setting, ground lines, circle lines, and high travel communication in position operation. Now, directing line center is the lines of six lines of calculations in position and moon operation surface locations comes into a mirror resolution pattern rotation surface. So this puts two-dimensional door lines in set location settings. Door lines of 1, door lines of 2, and set location direction. Now that direct line centers lines of 6 lines of position of pi, center lines of 3, center calculations of 4 lines of 3, set line calculation setting, redirecting signals, redirecting signals, redirecting signals, redirect. High calculation of graph line, center communication upline swing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, set lines of communication. Done by equation. All right. Kaleidoscope, graph line settings, high interference to track communication. 7 seal and line settings and set location of 2 lines of measure. So we get into the 7 line, you have line conditions of 7, 7, 7, 7, line condition line interference, 7 triangle line interference. So that's negative over pi, line condition setting, 8 line conditional levels, pi line restriction time lines, pi equals lines of 7, 7 lines equals 4, 4 lines, center lines of 3, setting correlation center of 6, opens the moon line operation setting into sun operation surface and set location system. Now, this redirects line center line is a center operation line, 0 gravity interference, 0 gravity in position, little calculations, artistry line stream interference in position location tapestry, center line, center line, center line, center line, center line, center line, in position of track line. Done through equation. All right, it's all set up. So, getting to direct signals is to understand how to see measure correlation. Getting the scales of balance is really understand how to use all purification through settings. Travel communication and anything through timelines, lock line, interference back in time states and location is how to understand this calculation of the sun and reposition its direct line signal and set locations. 7 channels of operational line settings put you into an old cycle to a new line setting of a new nature position traction. Light signature patterns, rotation surface, and ground lines of its operation in power direction of timelines. 104, 54 in line calculation setting. Tracking line setting high interference in direct line signals opens all calculation system into 144 of channel operation. Pattern line calculation line into positions puts pi direction of time sequence. Now the coordinate line interference would come into 2 positions of 2 panels, right? 4 clocking settings and position overlapping its signal locations. Channel line streamline interference and track communication. Sun line centers its position location operation line interference. Setting ground lines as 0 operation surface and set locations. 6 line channels and 6 line and center line and rotation surface. Setting correlation line positions of panels in operation line conditions back in sequence locations ground lines. Setting travel line interference. 7 million years line into future. Center gravity line interference. Travel communication setting, putting positions of high calculation setting into 4 lines of 3 lines and 7 lines in position of 5 in calculation of new atmosphere line change in calculation line stream into 0 operation to its surface and set lines of 0 operation setting in power direction of timelines and all calculation set locations. Done by equation. So, so there's a lot going on right now. A lot going on. So much calculation modification lines of factors over pi, positions all levels in line calculation setting, keyboards, key phrase, key locks, key channels, key operation line settings, time frequency line calculation line setting, directing signals and set location system. So you really have to recognize all calculation of what's happening in your setting lines and communication to cosmic universe location system. So 7 lines and 7 lines and 7 lines and 7 lines and 7 lines. Equal line condition, equal line condition, equal line conditions. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 line channels, position location, 7 center line interference. So we take the 7 line position of 6, center its communication. Moon lines its cross line stream. Line condition to the sun operates its surface location system, indirect line centered for 1 tither in calculation. Now, the rotators and the rooters sets line conditions to its moon line. This opens up the operation surface location, the operation ground lines as surface location system. This travels lines and line interference. It balances line communication nature and balance line setting. The 7-track line center comes into all position locations to a new Merkaba, new tesseract, a new open cycle, into a new magnetic highway information lines, a space anomaly, a high calculation system, and an 8-track line communication setting in direct signal. Setting communication settings in direct line condition system. So 2-panel operation lines, a 0 line in position of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 in center, 10 in operation, 11 in solar, and position of 12 in sequence location of the divine. Setting calculation of lines of center, center, center. Setting line connections of cobwebs, line interference of web graphing, and set location system and direct signals in one track location setting. Directing line interference. So 0 lines, we take the 0 line up here and cross lines. We go through up and then we go down. All right. Center line communication setting, direct line signals, 6, 7, 8 line position location 9, 10, 11, 12 and set location system. Travel communication line interference 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Tracking communication lines, the sky grid line settings, describe position locations, sky lids, high interference. Now there's 4 track line communication setting, direct signal, operation surface, and center line communication, and solar graph line settings. Puts operation signals and high calculation in position locations when it comes into line settings in operation surface, and 2 panels stripping line position location of track lines in high setting, directing signals in set location system in set location settings. 2 panels of operation line settings and track locations. Done by question. So this is got way beyond line communication settings. It's so powerful what we come into. So really understand the position, location, and directions. 7 channels of ground lines and set lines of 7 million line settings into seals as location of its engagement. This is where we come into protocol line, interline rotation, and position, location, and protocol. Calculations of the protocol, sending line calculation line interference, coming out of positions of its old line of a digital frame into a new digital frame line setting, and a set line communications of a reset line calculations into its core location settings. Redirecting signals and set location systems over 4, over 3, over 7 line communications into its triangulation of its interface positions into the line set location. All right. So speakers and positions for music. Yeah. I know it's extremely powerful, but I'm just showing you how you graph line, setting line interference, and shim res locations all through cosmic universe line settings in 144. So it's all done. Setting signal line interference. So once you understand the 140 graph line connection nice system. So track lines of 1. Now, because the line center is 44, stays line communication. Right? Center calculation is 0 operation. Right? 0 lines is flux capacitor, 0 calculation setting and direct signal and set location system. Dimensional sail line calculation streamlined. 0 operation center and position location of track line. So the line communication is really understand how the sun operates its surface in the high calculation line position. Now, we have to really understand how to use the 144. All right, it's your line condition of DNA. The operation surface sets line crop circles and graph lines in a 45-degree angle and set location setting. Directing line center line interference comes into position locations into cross lines and position locations in a cross line stream location system. Right? Channel line interference, platitude line rotations, walking surface, ground lines, operation holograph line connections. Travel calculations in the 2 line sectors and high interference of vector over pi in graph line centers and set location system and track line communication. Done by question. So we all have to understand how to use the holographic line stream. Now the center communication system is opening up 2 panels in position of 3 set location setting. So we got 1 panel, 2 panels, and 3 set location setting. Track lines and high interference triangulation, line communications in position, and center communication triangulation center. Redirecting line center line interference in position of center and position of center in the line calculation setting. Tracking line center lines and operation surface and set location of the sun. That center lines its center line of its communication opens up new signal lines of panels in position locations in its setting. See how powerful that is, that what comes into location? So the 7 line channels operates its center lines as communication. You're going to travel with that line setting. Now, 1 over pi sets line condition of 7 over line interference. So 7 line signals, 7 positions, 7 activations, 7 correlations. Directing line center line interference of 6, 6, 6, 6 in set location setting. Direct line interference, center communications into 5, 5, 5, 5 in set line condition system. Coordinates over pi. So line communications 7 million hours. 7 million tracks, 7 million grounds, 7 million operations, 7 million position locations in 7 bodies of water. The track line communication system is going to centralize the communication of 5 atmospheres of change in 1 setting. 1 clocking, all timelines, all at once in set locations. Multipass. Done through equation. Hooah! Woo! Woo! Yeah. Legendary at the most, right? But it's amazing what we come into through calculation modifications, all through navigations, guys. Especially when you get a balance of line signature patterns through travel mechanism line calculation settings and set locations are going back in time to set location. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. It's all set up. It's all set up. Now we're in 13 line settings into 4, right? 13 viewers and 4 line tracks, 40 line settings and 33 second line settings, 33 line seconds and 0 operation of 4 set locations, 0 operation of 9 is set line condition setting, position location of track line. Once it reaches 50, the calculation line setting is going to change position. You're going to see the solar graph. 1, 2, 3, 4. See? Boom. See that? Solar graph line, center communication setting, putting track lines in high interference. That's why there's 1 line of 0 operation to position location of 4 lines that set lines of 2 operation signals and set locations into 4 calculation of thumbs up and line connections. Done by equation. Hoo-ah. But the center calculation is going to show you exactly what you do in the 7-day signal location settings. Direct and signal location of high interference of sun in communications to all calculation line setting in set location. Okay? So, yeah, it's knowing exactly what you're seeing is the why, is the how, right? So it's incredible once we understand all calculations of different lines and location of realms, right? Each one at a different world. Yep, very good. Very, very good. So you're going to be going through line calculation, line settings, and direct signal. The operation surface is going to set line communication to its positions. So the operation line setting is 0 operation line connections, 0 operation lines of clocking, setting to 24 ground lines, 48 windows, 72 tracks, and 144 in set locations. All right. Channel lines of 24, circle line communication, 48, circle line communication, 72, circle line communication, 144. This is what happens when you go into higher communication of sun lines and communications. The channel line and line interference changes line communications to its position. The operation surface sets line communication and circle location settings. These redirect line, center line interference, and your moon operations set location of the system. Track lines of 24, 48, 72, and 144 graph line streams. Quarter inch and set lines of a quarter graph, line graphs, line streams, line and position locations, and 12 cycles that set line calculation streamlines and set location system. Track and line interference location, high interference. Pi recognition of line calculation system, and 4 lines of 6 and position of 8 in center communication setting into infinity cycles of set location system. So this is how it creates a portal, Gypsy, a calculation line setting. So every time you go through a clock lines of 12 and a 24, 48, 72, 144, you're going into a digital line of a digital realm of a clock line center like a pancake. So it's creating pancakes in set line condition system, and you're stretching them out in set line condition setting and direct signal to its location system. The clock line channel changes line communications. Anything past 144, you're clocking line center line interference in position location starting lines of foundation graph lines and 012 calculation setting into 0 of operation. Okay? So try to understand how to set up digital layer line settings. Rotation surface, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Now, inset line communication comes into this line setting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So every time you have a clock in set line connection in high setting, this is what it's coming into, realms, right? So directing signal line interference and sun and position of the moon set locations, right? Kaleidoscope line, center line interference, triangulations, all set line conditions, all settings. Directing signals, 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 set location system, right? That travels line, center line, and rotations, correlation system, and creates realms of calculation to set lines of communication. That's how it comes into a portal of communication all levels in line signals. Realms of communications, right? So they become plateaus, they become platforms. Crop circle line, setting line interference of 144. Any past line communication setting, 0 operation into 1 set location setting. 0 operation into 2, 0 operation into 3, 0 operation into 4, all the way up to the line communication of 0 to 12. Okay? So every time you go faster, your clock line setting is changing all calculations into zero numbers in set line condition system. This puts position of track lines in your voice lines and grid lines into its navigation surface that sets up consoles of communication settings in all track line communications in its position location of traction. Okay? So it's very powerful how to set locations of portals of communication, higher levels of travels, and clock line settings. Okay? I think we'll keep that line setting, coming back in that line interference. But I just want to show you how to set lines of communication, how everybody travels line setting location to its position location of dimensional sail. The rotation spin cycles always center lines as center line communication in direct line signals and set location system. All right? Setting calculation line interference and set locations. Tracking communication line interference and set locations going up in signal location setting. Plateau line interference in the opposite direct location system of location position. Right? So there's all different lines of plateaus. These are plateaus lines of 144 track locations. All right? Travel communication setting and track line setting direction. Now, directing signals comes into pi calculation setting, directing signals. So the correlation system comes into higher calculation setting into your Merkaba positions. Now, line connecting line interference, you look really, really close, you can actually see the dimensional sail of set locations. There it is, dimensional sail, done by equation, right? So that's what it is. It's all about understanding how to use the triangulations in position first and how to create a dimensional sail on set location. Okay? Sky purple and goldish. Yeah, but it's very powerful how you guys come into this line conditions of two lines in set line communications, right? Center calculation is center lines in position location higher level settings, okay, in a travel mechanism of time travels in set line conditionized system. Okay? So it gets extremely complicated over time. Time sectors is lines of quadrant location of the vectors. Vector cross is line center line interference. But anything past lines of 144, the tracking line communication system is coming to 0, 1 at track location. 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3 set location settings, right? So we got the line communication when it comes in set location. I'm going to save that too. All right, so directing signals. Okay, so we come into this line communications. We come into 24 ground lines, line communication system, right? So that's 0 lines in ground line level, okay? Setting position of ozone. You have to have the ozone line, right? Because it could be in line because alpha line in communications in position of biosurface and location setting. Now, directing line interference comes into all position of 48. 40 is a window to its calculations, which is 0 in calculations of 1. Setting calculation line into a diamond core line setting, recognition of time sequence. Setting 0, 1s in line interference in position of track lines, a higher application system. Setting position locations in line interference is 72. Sets of 0, 0, 1 locations, block its center line communication setting direct signal. Setting 0, 0 operation, always travel line calculations of 0 lines. Setting correlation line interference, travel communication around lines of port communications. So line communication of graph lines in positions, once you get into 144, is set line conditioning system, equal line condition settings into 3 zeros of operation of one signal in a location setting. Right? So 144 is this platitude line communication to its crop circle, a ground operation to its plateau. So that creates line center line interference. So we take the 0001 and create it through its sun or its moon of its dimensional line communication and hard calculation streams. Setting direct signals in set location system brings back the calculation line setting in direct line signal in line communication of its moon of our operation surface and set location system of projection. Done by equation. So you really have to understand how this works for you in all ways and forms, okay? It's a direct signal to set locations. How you use it is all levels of provision, right? It's your projections. It's your projections. And this is how you come into line connection, right? Really understand how to use it through the 24, 48, 72, and 144 clock line setting locations. So every time you go through channel operation line setting, okay, it creates a portal. It creates a round. It creates a wormhole, right? So it's here. Okay? And then it opens up. And then you travel through it, you know? So you look like you're going like this and you're traveling through 6 or 7, but actually traveling through one center. but you're going so fast, and the face recognition line setting changes all direct location of its signals. That's why it's okay. So it's very powerful when you're coming into that line communication of all set line connections. Okay, it's incredible when you learn how to travel through portal communication, all through 144 of graph line settings of plateaus, right? It's the holographic ground lines, guys, of travel. The avatar has to be in plateau of its communication of travel. It's got to travel, right? So it's got a platitude, it's got to walk its surface location setting and direct signals. Setting calculation at vortex of this panel and calculation setting. In this direct signal into this panel and set location system. So it travels here, center lines its communication, opens up another dimensional around set location. You travel to that line setting and set a line in position of 244 to a faster track communication system. That track line center line interference opened another zero line rotation surface and another calculation line interference and track communication. Center lines is high line interference, travels line communication, a faster track communication setting, and direct signal. All right. So every time you go out in line communication, you're orbiting channels. Orbiting channel is an inner line to an outer line rotation. Setting calculation line setting is all levels of calculation to its galaxy streamline. It sets a communication line, direct line signals, and set locations. But it's very powerful when you set up communication of travels through your avatar calculations, through 144. And anything above line center locations, you're going faster in space. Your clock lines are going faster. You come into the calculation line settings into 0-1, right? You start with the 0-1 line setting because there's lines of infinity cycles of zero operation. You have to start with that calculations. Then you come into 1 line setting. And then you go into 2 and then 3 and 4 and 5, all the way up to 12 line center location of foundation graph lines. But the position location is all about directing line signals, bringing you guys back to 1 line setting. All time lines all at once. Merging calculation lines of GOD opens all set line communication, your set line positions. Okay? So in that signal, then you understand travel. You see the dimensional sail? You see it? Multipass. So the actual dimensional sail is the line communication, your DOD, that's connected to line interference of 369 or set location settings. You're using the numbers to travel higher through higher calculations of dimensional realms of portals of calculation. Okay? It gets easier once you understand the operation of you inside location of travel. Okay? But I just wanted to show you what it is in all site connections. All right? It's incredible how we come into line communications, all levels of travel. Okay? But the 144 is the basic introductions of zero gravity line setting in a holographic stream. Plateaus of platforms of a road graph line setting. Anything above line interference, you come into higher calculations of higher levels, dimensional location of dimensional door settings. Higher line settings and higher calculation. Right? But they need plateaus. They need the position locations. The avatar needs the cross lines. It needs to walk its surface locations. Okay? So there's a lot of things that you have to understand how this works for you in all ways and forms. This modifies the navigation line setting to your position locations, to your wind sail of operation. Okay? So floating through clouds, zooming around the mountains, like, yeah. Well, you guys are getting it, set lines and high communication setting, direct signal locations, all right? All right, so we got a very powerful day line, center line interference, holding a marathon communication AVR line interference. Make sure you guys, if you come coming on live in general, you wear it brown, okay? The center coloration line interference of Mercury is going to be set communications into magnetic fields of set location settings, directing signal location to a system. All right, so calculation modification line interference location are reset in set lines of your CPU line position operation to its activation stream. Okay? All right, take track lines, high interference, dimensional sails, high center location, high interference. Take them out of position location, the clock lines, back and ground lines operation. All right, guys, they're back. Calculation line interference, question or comments, let me know. Everybody have a wonderful day. Adios.